Hello, welcome to Chartsmart. My name is Bob and I'm going to give you a brief introductory video to give you a basic idea how it works. It's an end-of-day charting tool, been going for over 25 years. This is a chart of Microsoft and it's about 7 years, and you can switch to daily by clicking the day button. So you can see there's a number of buttons on the top that allow you to bring up various features, and on the top there's some pop-down menus. For example, this one that gives the indicators, or various other tools and certain maintenance features and so on. Now, rather than go into the details on the charts, I'm actually going to go into the screening immediately because it's the main feature of Chartsmart. And first of all, so that's all in the filter menu up here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just make a new filter set, and I'm going to just call it sample. Okay, and the idea is that if I run this filter, it goes through the database, which is on your PC, and it goes through about 14,000 stocks. And actually you can see that what was generated in this list of the 14,000 is only 11,000, and that's because I have a feature on here that makes it exclude ETFs. So you can either include them or exclude them, because a lot of people don't want to look through ETFs. In that area, to change that, I'll just go back up here to I believe it's under display, miscellaneous display settings, and you can see down here I've got if this is checked, then ETFs are excluded. So I'm going to uncheck that and rerun this. So you'll see that if you watch the bar going by, there's 14,400 securities, and that's what we get this time. So what happens is, basically in Chartsmart you have a list of US and Canadian stocks and the main exchanges, and you scroll and you create your own filtered list, and you can save that, and then you can customize it and look for things within it. And then what you do is you close their filter menu, and then you can scroll through the list. Okay, so you start here with the group button, you begin scrolling, and here's Allegiant Technology. These are all sorted alphabetically. So one important feature in Chartsmart, just while we're looking at a chart, are these colored lines, which you can turn off or on. And for example, you can see the black line on the bottom. It starts to go up in the last year and a half. Well, that's the revenue of the company, and you can see how the stock went up as well. You can also see the red line going up, which is the earnings. So the blue is the dividends, and the yellow is cash. Magenta is the PE ratio. So that's kind of a neat feature to have, to be able to look at the chart. I'm just going to scroll through a few more. And remember, these are everything on Canadian and US. So take another one like Alcoa. You can see the revenue, or the earnings, have been going up quite a bit in the last bit because of the red line going up. And actually the revenue hasn't gone up that much, but the earnings have. So you can get a quick picture of what's going on with various companies through that fundamentals. But let's go back into the filter menu. So this is really why Chartsmart excels. First of all, it's on your hard drive, so it's very fast. It goes in one folder, the C-Smart folder, and you can customize your list. So we've got this sample filter set. So let's go in here and pretend it's like a basket, and we need to put the criteria in the basket, and those are the criteria that will tell us which stocks out of the 14,000 we will go through and look at. So you can, for example, choose certain exchanges. Now, remembering there were about 14,400 in the database, if we were to just take NASDAQ and New York and Toronto and run the screen, we know there'd be less. So let's see how many there actually are. So you see there's 11,000 on top in the yellow, 11,858. You can see if you look at the symbols, they're all got NQ, NY, or TO at the end. So we've gone through and created a list of the stocks on those three exchanges. Now we'll go into more detail about how we can break it down. You can see it's actually fairly simple to use. And for example, we could go through and we could say, well, I want to look at them when I scroll through them by the daily volume of shares. So I'm resorting this group so I can see the highest volume ones first. So if I go through and I close and I go close here and I go back to the group button, you can see there's my 1168 and I've sorted it by daily volume. So if I go first through here, you can see that this one comes up and the huge amount of volume. Okay, now here we go, we'll go one more. There we go. So there's Apple, so it had quite a big volume, and we can look at the info button and get various information on it and so on. Now as we're scrolling through this list, we can actually put them in a watch list. So that's where this feature comes in, the Z Watch. So I've got a sample list, but what I could do is I could add a new watch list and just call it Bob's list, and it'll be empty. But as I'm scrolling through these various ones, I could say, well, okay, I like this one here, and so I want to add this to my watch list. Okay, so I add the display chart, and this can build up. And by the way, these green buttons are on a lot of menus. These basically play videos, so that stands for video 159. So you can get help on the specific menu that you're looking at quite quickly. So let's go back to the filter menu, okay, and let's look at this sample again, and let's go into more detail. Let's, for example, let's take the ETFs out again. So this is a more of a global way of doing it. So as I showed you before, we can go to the display settings and turn this off here. So if we run that list of, say, I think we had 11,000 we were getting, I can't quite remember, but let's run it again, and this will give us a list. Yeah, it's got 8,000 now. So what we've done is we've excluded the ETFs. Now there's a faster way to go to the group button. Instead of closing, I can just click this and it gets me there, and then I can go begin scrolling again, and you'll notice that there's no ETFs in this list. Okay, and as we go through, you'll probably see fundamentals on the bottom in all cases. So we go back to the filters, and now you can go through, and I'm just going to go through these tabs. You could, for example, say I just want them to be into specialty chemicals or into coal, for example. I'll just try that. I haven't done that, but let's just try coal. Okay, so we get 15 companies on the 3 exchanges that are into coal, and I know, for example, this one is, and Sun Coke, and so on. So, and you could of course screen this out more and more. So I'll go back here. Let's take that one out, and you could select more than one. For example, you could you know, you could look at just banks, and you could select all the banks and so on. So you can go and select certain types of securities to exclude or include warrants, for example. As we get onward, it's more interesting. For example, you could say you want it trading near the year high or the year low. For example, I could say I want the price to be a certain amount from the year high. So if I click on this, and let's say I want it to be within 10% of the year high, okay, and I rerun this, we're basically getting stocks in those 3 exchanges that are trading near year highs. So of course this has gone down substantially from 8,000 to 1,000. Okay, so let's go look at them, and you should see, we can look at the daily charts for this, but the weeklies show, you can see how it's peaking up way at top. It's within 10% of the high. I'm going to go to a daily chart, and you can see it better that way, because a year, 52 weeks would be from here back to here. So we're looking at that range. So let's just scroll through them really quick, and you can see how each of these is trading near its high. Okay, now we haven't even started to look at you know, some of the capabilities with the the screens. For example, you could also look at ones that are at their low, or ones that have dropped dramatically in the last, say, 50 days. For example, if I want the price to have dropped over 20% in the last 50 days, let's see what we get. Okay, so we get 11,000, or sorry, 1,100, and let's look at these charts so you can see how these, and we're looking just at the last, say, this period here, they will have dropped a substantial amount. Okay, so you see on the charts how they've had that big dip. So if you're looking ones that might have come down a lot, you might like that kind of thing. Now you can, and once you've made your list, it's saved. You can rerun it every day, and or whenever you want, and you can have as many different filter sets as you want. So you can see it starts to get more interesting. You have a lot of flexibility, and the flexibility with the actual screens is more than you'll find anywhere. So we can look at volatility, the percent prices from the 2-week low or so on. Let's look at some of the volume ones. So you could look at the number of trades. You could say that you don't want ones that are inactive. You could say, well, I want it to have traded at least 25 of the last 30 days. So you won't get inactive ones where they are spotty. You can make sure that they're liquid. You can compare the current volume, for example, 1 week average volume with the average in 10 weeks to see the ones that are increasing in volume. Let's go into some of the technical screens. So for example, you could look here at different types of breakouts where over the last 1, 2, or 3 days there's been a certain pattern. You can look at specific crossovers, and then what you can do is you can set the chart up so that you can look at those. So for example, let's go down to MACD crossovers, and if I look at for MACD crossovers where the 12-day goes through the 25-day, okay, I think this is, I can't quite remember, yeah, this is the exponential averages. So it's a crossover of the two exponential averages. So let's take out this screen, okay, and let's run this. Okay, so we get 31. Okay, so what happens is I can go back to the chart, but before I look at this chart, I can, for example, turn off the colored bars that you saw there before, and I can go to the indicators, to the MACD, and make sure that on the daily charts I show the 25 and the 12-day lines, which is what we screened on. Okay, so now I can look at the first one of the 31, and you can see over here just in the right how there's a crossover of the two lines, and I'll go through a couple more. It's a little hard to see on some of these. There's a good example. Okay, so you've got this drop where one moving average is above the other, but then you've got a crossover, and what we've screened for is that crossover of the exponential moving average differences. Okay, so then what you of course say is, oh, I like this one, I think I'll put this in my watch list. Okay, and I can go back here. Let's go back to our sample screen again, and let's take this one out for the MACD crossovers. And there is a way to, once you create a screen, you can actually duplicate it in the somewhere in the filter menu. I forgot where it was. You can export it, so you can copy it and do multiple copies of your filter set, and then change it a little bit and have all the filter sets that are similar but slightly different. So let's go further. Okay, so we've looked at some of the technicals, and you can recognize some of the things: stochastics, Williams, classic money flow, and so on, and candlestick. And there's like 30 or 40 or 50 candlestick screens, and I haven't even told you about how you can actually create your own candlestick screens with Chartsmart. But let's go to the fundamentals, which is probably one of the more interesting areas for longer term investors. And so example, if we look at these three exchanges, we could say, well, I want to look for stocks that have dividends. And so I could select this one, the dividend yield. And let's say I want a dividend yield over 3%. Okay, so we can run that, and let's see how many we get. Okay, we get 1,100 stocks. So we'll take a look through some of these, and I can just show you. I don't know if it shows it on here. Yeah, on the upper right, right above that red line, you can see the dividend yield in yellow. It says 6.3%, 6.33. And if I click the forward button, you can just watch that yellow area. You can see all the dividend yields are over 3. Okay, you'll notice, I'll go back to a weekly chart, also that there's a blue line in the fundamentals, and that represents the dividend. So you can see, for example, in this one, that the blue line's going up consistently, which means their dividend's going up consistently. And to actually get the exact figure, you click over here on the PD5 button, and you can see the dividends per share each year. You can do it by quarters or by year. This is set to year, and you can see how there was this dramatic growth in 2018, and you probably see that back here on the chart where the blue line went up. And likewise, you can see the revenues are actually going down a lot, the black line. But anyway, we were just looking at the dividends here. So let's go further if you're interested in dividends. And you could say, well, I want them to be growing. So you could actually specify that the dividend is, for example, over here, up 3 days in a row or 3 years in a row. So obviously that's going to reduce our list a bit more. Okay, so now we're down to 358. And if we look at the blue line, you'll see how it will last 3 years. It will always be going up. Okay, because we've specified we want growing dividends. Now let's go further. You could look at the PE ratio. So let's go look at the PE ratio, and we say, well, we want a PE ratio that's under 20. Okay, the price earnings ratio. So that'll restrict this group further. Okay, so there we go. We got 255. So let's go look through the charts. So you can see the magenta line on the bottom here. There's a little number 20 on the right, and it's under 20. And that's basically, we'll just watch that. You can see it there. Okay, that one's really low. Okay, so there we go, Algoma, steel, and there's the PE ratio. If you click on the chart, you can actually get a summary. For example, on the upper left on the bottom of the box, you can see the PE ratio is 10.38. And on this one, you can see the dramatic growth in the dividend and the earnings, which is the red line. So very interesting that you can scroll through these things and so immediately get an idea what's going on with the company. Of course, you can put different indicators. You see 2 bars on the bottom, the fundamentals bar, and on the bottom you can see the RSI. You can put 3 bars of indicators on the charts, or you can take them all away. For example, I could actually go in here and say display, keep indicators but do not display. So then I get a full chart without the indicators. So I'm going to go back here and turn it back on so I show the indicators. So there are just so many features in here, but I'm kind of focusing on the filters right now so that you can get an idea of how easy it is for you to do this. So I'm just going to briefly go through a few of the last things, but I'm not going to actually run screens. Okay, so just going through the fundamentals. There's just so many in here. You might recognize, you can look for revenue growth, you can look for balance sheet items, for example, that the long-term debt is a certain amount or the cash is a certain amount, and of course a lot of different ratios. Okay, so this is quite sophisticated. Now going further, let's go to the watch list. You can actually screen out the stocks that are in your lists. For example, you know that I put 2 stocks in Bob's list, so sorry, I'm not going to do that here, but I can create another filter of just the stocks in my list. And there's another way to do that too. If I go back to my actual watch list, I can go view charts, and that puts the stocks in my watch list in the filters, so I can actually scroll through the stocks in my watch list. Okay, so let's go back to the filter menu, and we've done these. The portfolio, we can do the same thing. If we have a portfolio, we can go through the stocks in our portfolio. You could also do a screen on the stocks that were in your last filtered list, and that's kind of a little bit more complicated, but you could have a filtered list of say 300 stocks, and then you could do some sub-screens on it. These two here, Ind and Custom, these are stocks that make up specific indexes. For example, the TSX Venture might have a certain number of stocks. So for example, I could go through and say, well, what I'm going to do is make a new filter set, and we'll call it sample 2. Okay, and I could go in here to the In tab and say, okay, give me just the stocks that make up the TSX Venture Index, and here they are. Okay, you can see they all have VA. Okay, now what happens, you can then subscreen those. So if you just want to look at ones that make up a certain, sorry, I went too fast there. If you just want to look at ones that make up a certain index and then do screens of them, you can do that. Okay, so let's go back to our original sample here, and custom applies to US. So for example, you could say I just want to look at all US ETFs, or stocks that make up the NASDAQ, and so on. Now these two top ones, special and specify, you specify, are more advanced. Okay, and the special ones, you can just imagine what you can do, for example, is look for stocks that are just new listings, or look for stocks on the venture that have just had consolidations. Or you can even go through the news releases, and for example in the Canadian you could say, well, I just want to look for Canadian stocks on the TSX Venture that have had private placements within the last 3 months that are currently trading at year lows, and so on, right? So I'm not going to go into the detail there, but these are very powerful screens. And finally, the most powerful thing in Chartsmart here is the use specify, and this actually allows you to make your own formulas. And what I'm going to do here is go back to sample 2, because there's really nothing in here, and I'm just going to take and go back and choose those exchanges we had, NASDAQ, New York, and Toronto, and I'm going to go to the use specify, and you can see you've got a number of custom calculated lists, and you can name these as you want. And in this case, I've made a formula, and these are the variables here. TM CURAS, which is current assets, are greater than total liabilities. So I could find just the stocks that are with those characteristics. Now, you'll obviously want to know what variables are available, and here are some web help variables for custom formulas. So let's take a look at that in Chartsmart. And these in dark black are the variables. Okay, so you can make formulas out of these, and these are the technical ones. And now we get into the fundamental ones. For example, you could say that the number of employees is a certain amount, or as I mentioned, here's the current assets and current liabilities. But you could also say, for example, that you want the cash on hand to be over the total liabilities, so that if they liquidated with their cash, they could cover their liabilities. Or you could draw a relationship. Say I want the current cash times 2 divided by total liabilities to be a certain amount. So you can see that it's extremely powerful. Now, this is our custom formula area, and let's go ahead and add this current assets, and let's see what we get. Okay, so these are going to be stocks on those 3 exchanges where their current assets exceed their current liabilities, and then we could go through and we could scroll through them. Okay, and we could say, okay, I like that one. I'm going to add that to my watch list. Okay, now this video is getting a little long. I've covered the basic process. There's just some amazing features in Chartsmart. One of the neatest ones is the print feature, which I guess I'll take a quick look at in this video. But what you can do, for example, if I were to take any filter list, take these 3 stocks that I did, let's maybe add another one. Actually, that's not a very good chart with any history. Let's try that one, and we'll add that one. Okay, so what you can do is you can go to the filter menu and you can go print charts for a list. Okay, so you can actually do for example, say 4 weekly charts per page landscape. Okay, and what I can do is, what it's doing is it's taking a snapshot of each of those charts exactly the way we formatted it. Okay, and it's saving it to a PDF. Okay, the only thing I've done here is I've done the wrong filter list. It's doing a great big long one, probably. So what I'm going to do is stop it. No, stop print job. There we go. Okay, but that doesn't matter. What we can do is go to this menu, and we can go View Files or Delete. Okay, so this is what I just created. Okay, in a folder here, and let's take a look at it. I'll click on one of these, and what I've created, what it's doing is it should be bringing up my PDF viewer. Oh, I've done something wrong here because I think I needed to close the chart first. So I'm going to leave this in the video, but you can see what this is here is the blue part is not supposed to show up, and I'm just going to reduce this to 50%. So what you do is you get a chart like this, and probably a better example of that than what I just did here, which I did wrong, is to I can just go to our web page actually. So let's go to Google here, to Chartsmart, and this is where you're looking at this video. And if I go down here, you can actually see where is it here, on the chart printing, how you can print a batch of charts 4 per page. And this is really what I was trying to do. So you can take any list and print the charts out as you wish, and there's various formats you could also do it. So you could have the fundamentals on the same page, so you could have printed like a daily or weekly chart with that same fundamentals menu I showed you. So I could probably say that this is 5 or 10% what Chartsmart is all about. There's just so much involved. So I'll go back here. There's even ways to screen out the trend in certain indicators. For example, if you look at other software, it might say, well, I can screen out stocks that have an RSI, relative strength index, over 75. Okay, that's great. So you screen it out and you get the stocks. What you can do with Chartsmart is, because we keep all the values every day going back years, you can go back and for example, I'll just bring up a chart for, say, IBM, and you can see there on the bottom here in green, that's the RSI line, and you can see how it's trended down over the last, say, 4 months. But you can actually run a screen and say, well, I want the RSI to be under 40 right now, and I want it to be over 50, say, 2 months ago, and over 60 3 months ago. And so what you can do is actually find stocks where you can get a trend like this, where the IBM one is going down and all the RSIs would be trending down, not just the absolute value now. And you can do this with all kinds of things, your moving averages, your Bollinger Bands, and so on. You can specify the trend in them. So that's probably one of the most sophisticated features in Chartsmart. There is another area over here called historical variables, which is kind of what I was referring to. But you can also backtest your filter sets, which is a way to compare the results of your various filter sets to see which ones seem to be giving you better returns, so you can evaluate them. And that's one of the most sophisticated features, and that requires the backtest files, which I just told you about. You need to have the historical values to be able to do that. And there's very few products out there that would even come close to being able to do that. So that's going to be the end of the video here for now. The data button is so basically, I'll just get into the installation. In order to get going with Chartsmart, you'll go to our web page, which I just showed you, and just go download your trial. And if you need more than 30 days, just let us know. We're flexible. We just want you to be able to have an opportunity to try it as you will. There's absolutely no need to send us your email or any information. We don't need credit card information. You'll basically just download the csmart.exe file and extract it. It'll take like 1 minute to download, a minute to extract, and then you'll get an icon on your desktop, which will be like this green one here, and you can start Chartsmart. And first thing you'll probably want to do once you get going is just go to Data and then Downloader, and these likely won't all be green. There'll be a few red ones. Just go Download and Continue, and it should automatically download, and then you can be offline after that. So if you're camping or away from the internet, all you need to do is get to the internet for like 3 minutes, download, which actually only takes about 10-20 seconds, and then you're up to date. You go offline and you can do your analysis. And we've had many people that do that. They live in the outskirts and they get to internet, and then they download, and then they do their analysis for a day or two, and they don't need to be on the internet to use Chartsmart. So that's the data button, and I guess that's about it for now. So if you need any help, just email us at info@chartsmart.com and enjoy your trial, and email us your questions if you have any. So thank you very much for listening.